It's called the Showcase of Immortals, the grandest stage of them all. For over 40 years, WrestleMania has been the biggest event in the world of pro wrestling. But that's not how it started. Our story starts with a gamble in 1985. Vince McMahon was running a wrestling company with global dreams but regional money. Pay-per-views were barely a thing. Nobody had tried to turn pro wrestling into a stadium-scale live event. McMahon decided to take a bet anyway. On March 31st, 1985, the first WrestleMania took place at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Ring announcer Howard Finkel came up with the name, riffing on the Beatlemania craze of the 1960s. To pull in a mainstream audience, McMahon loaded the card with celebrities. Muhammad Ali served as a guest referee. Cyndi Lauper managed Wendy Richter to a women's title win. And the main event featured Hulk Hogan and Mr. T against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. Hogan pinned Orndorff to win the main event, and with it, the WWF signaled to the world that wrestling belonged on the global stage. The experiment was such a success that it locked in the WrestleMania formula going forward. Big celebrities, big names, big moments, once a year. WrestleMania 2 in 1986 tried to change that formula and failed miserably. The show took place across 3 venues simultaneously: Nassau Coliseum in New York, the Rosemont Horizon in Chicago, and the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena. It was a bold idea on paper and a complete mess in execution. The main feud was Hogan defending his WWF Championship against King Kong Bundy in a steel cage. The match was fine, but never felt special. Critics have frequently listed WrestleMania 2 among the worst events in the show's history. The novelty of the 3-city format diluted everything. The lesson was clear. WrestleMania needed to be one place, one night. WrestleMania 3 in 1987 corrected all of that in the most spectacular way possible. The Pontiac Silverdome in Michigan, an announced attendance of 93,173 fans, and a main event that had been building for over a year. Andre the Giant, Hogan's longtime friend, had turned on him, managed by the conniving Bobby Heenan, and challenged him for the WWF Championship. When Hogan body-slammed the 520-pound giant in front of that roaring crowd, it became one of the most iconic images in the history of sports entertainment. The match wasn't technically the best thing on the card. That honor went to Randy Savage versus Ricky Steamboat for the Intercontinental Championship. But Hogan slamming Andre is the image that lived forever. WrestleMania 4 in 1988 told a different kind of story. Andre the Giant had sold the WWF Championship to the Million Dollar Man, and WWF President Jack Tunney vacated the title. A 14-man single-elimination tournament would crown a new champion at WrestleMania. It was a creative solution, but a structural problem. Too many matches and not enough stakes per match. Randy Savage, aided by Hulk Hogan at ringside, fought through the bracket and defeated the Million Dollar Man in the final to become WWF champion. The image of Miss Elizabeth celebrating with Savage after his win was heartwarming, but the show itself was exhausting. Critics gave the event a lukewarm reception, noting its extended length and large number of matches. However, the genius of WrestleMania 4 was what it set up for next year. Savage and Hogan formed the Mega Powers and spent 1988 as the dominant faces of WWF. The tension was always there. Savage was jealous of Hogan's relationship with Miss Elizabeth. The breaking point came in early 1989, when Savage accused Hogan of trying to steal Elizabeth. The feud was built on betrayal, jealousy, and personal conflict, and it set the stage for one of the most emotionally charged matches in Mania history. WrestleMania 5 in 1989 back at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City delivered that payoff as the Mega Powers exploded. The show drew 767,000 pay-per-view buys in the US and Canada, the largest number WrestleMania had done, and a record that wouldn't be broken for 10 years. Miss Elizabeth started in a neutral corner before being ejected by the referee. Savage worked the match brilliantly as the paranoid, scheming heel before Hogan eventually hulked up, hit the leg drop, and won his second WWF Championship. Underneath the main event, Rick Rude defeated the Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental Championship. WrestleMania 6 in 1990 at the Sky Dome in Toronto dared to do something unprecedented and put its 2 biggest babyfaces against each other. Hulk Hogan, the WWF Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, the Intercontinental Champion, both titles on the line. The crowd in Toronto loved both men equally, which gave the match a special electricity. Warrior won both championships with a splash after Hogan missed a leg drop and kicked out of Warrior's press slam. Not everyone was happy that Hogan lost, but the Hulkster bounced back the following year. WrestleMania 7 in 1991 gave us 2 very different things on the same night. The main event saw Hulk Hogan defeat Sergeant Slaughter for the WWF Championship, but the night's real treasure was the undercard. Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior, who had been feuding since Savage cost Warrior his title at the Royal Rumble, had a retirement match that told a story from bell to bell. After Warrior won, Savage's manager Sensational Sherry turned on him immediately, and then Miss Elizabeth, who had been sitting in the crowd, rushed to the ring to pull Sherry away and reunite with Savage in one of WrestleMania's most emotional moments. Elsewhere on the card, a young Undertaker defeated Jimmy Snuka in what seemed like a throwaway match. Nobody knew that win would mark the beginning of Mania's most iconic record. WrestleMania 8 in 1992 had two high-stakes main events. Ric Flair, having come to WWF from the NWA and claiming he'd had a romantic relationship with Miss Elizabeth before she met Savage, had been tormenting Savage for months. The personal edge made the feud feel real. Savage chased Flair around the ring with fury, and Flair used every dirty trick available, but Savage caught him with a roll-up to win the WWF Championship. The second main event was Hogan vs. Sid Justice, which ended in controversy with a Papa Shango run-in. On the undercard, The Undertaker picked up his second WrestleMania win over Jake Roberts. But while WrestleMania 8 had a weak ending, WrestleMania 9 was probably the most chaotic installment in the event's history. Held outdoors at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas in a toga-themed spectacle, the production was unlike anything before it. The main event saw Bret Hart lose the WWF Championship to Yokozuna. And then, in a moment that's still debated today, Hulk Hogan charged into the ring and challenged Yokozuna on the spot, winning the title in under 25 seconds. The crowd popped huge, but the decision was widely criticized. WrestleMania 9 felt like the WWF losing its direction, which made WrestleMania 10 in 1994 so important. Mania was back at Madison Square Garden for the 10th edition, and the show opened with one of the greatest technical wrestling matches ever. Owen Hart had turned on his older brother Bret after years of living in his shadow, a feud built on real sibling dynamics that fans connected with instantly. Owen defeated Bret in the opener in a genuine classic, but Bret would wrestle twice that night, returning later to beat Yokozuna for the WWF Championship with Roddy Piper as the special referee. And then there was Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels in a ladder match that was revolutionary and extremely dangerous for its time. Razor ultimately won, but the match itself was the real victory for everyone watching. WrestleMania 10 was the first edition without Hulk Hogan on the card, and it proved definitively that the show had evolved beyond any one star. It closed the first decade of WrestleMania's history with a new generation and ended on a high. But the road through the next 10 WrestleManias would be anything but smooth. This stretch of the show's history contains some of its absolute worst nights and some of its absolute best, sometimes within months of each other. WrestleMania 11 in 1995 is remembered for all the wrong reasons. WWF was in the thick of its steroid scandal, Hogan was gone, and the company was struggling to find its next top star. Their solution for the main event was to pit NFL legend Lawrence Taylor against Bam Bam Bigelow in the main event. Taylor performed better than anyone expected, but putting a football player in the main event of WrestleMania felt like a step backward. The actual WWF Championship match between Diesel and Shawn Michaels was knocked down the card. The show drew poorly, and is often considered one of the worst installments in Mania history. However, WrestleMania 12 in 1996 offered something never seen before. The 60-minute Iron Man match between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels went the full hour with no falls, sending it into sudden death overtime. Michaels hit Sweet Chin Music, got the pinfall, and became WWF champion to a massive ovation. It was Michaels' defining WrestleMania moment and one of the most ambitious match formats the company had ever tried. On the undercard, The Undertaker defeated Diesel to extend his streak, and The Ultimate Warrior made a surprise return. The show was far from perfect, but the main event gave it purpose. Then came 1997, and WrestleMania found a new attitude. The main event of WrestleMania 13 was Undertaker vs. Psycho Sid for the WWF Championship in a match that was decent but not special. But on the undercard was Bret Hart vs. Stone Cold Steve Austin in a match that has been voted by IGN as the greatest match in WrestleMania history. The match's famous finish with Austin refusing to submit, passing out in the sharpshooter while the crowd roared, completed one of wrestling's greatest double turns. In one match, the Attitude Era found its protagonist. WrestleMania 14 in 1998 made it official as the main event gave us Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship, with Mike Tyson as the special enforcer. Tyson had appeared weeks earlier and seemingly aligned with Michaels and D-Generation X. But then, in one of wrestling's great swerves, Tyson revealed he had been aligned with Austin all along and personally counted the pinfall, declaring Austin the winner. Austin became champion, Tyson brought mainstream attention, and the Attitude Era was in full swing. WrestleMania 15 in 1999 delivered the first of three legendary meetings between Austin and The Rock at the grandest stage. The Rock, now the heel champion of Vince McMahon's corporation, had been feuding with Austin through the winter in the hottest storyline in wrestling. When Austin finally beat The Rock for the title, the crowd in Philadelphia erupted. It wasn't a five-star technical clinic, but it didn't need to be. The emotion and heat made it electric. On the undercard, The Undertaker defeated Big Boss Man in one of the worst streak matches. But while Mania 15's undercard was weak, WrestleMania 2000 had a stacked undercard that almost eclipsed the main event. Edge, Christian, the Hardy Boys, and the Dudley Boys went to war in a triangle ladder match for the tag titles that tore the house down and set the template for years of TLC chaos to come. The main event was a four-way elimination match for the WWF Championship involving Triple H, The Rock, Mick Foley, and The Big Show, which Triple H won, marking the first time a heel had won the main event of WrestleMania. It was a bold choice that divided opinion. The show made stars out of the tag division and demonstrated how deep the Attitude Era roster had become, but sending the crowd home with a Triple H win felt anticlimactic after everything that year had built. However, the following year, we witnessed peak. WrestleMania 17 took place in April 2001 at the Reliant Astrodome in Houston and is widely regarded as the greatest WrestleMania ever. Austin versus The Rock in the main event. Undertaker versus Triple H in a brutal brawl. Shane McMahon versus Vince McMahon in a wild street fight. Edge and Christian, the Hardys, and the Dudleys in TLC. Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit. Chris Jericho versus William Regal. There was no weak link on the card. WrestleMania 17 set a bar that the show has been chasing ever since. WrestleMania 18 in 2002 at Toronto's Skydome was officially the last WWF WrestleMania before the company became WWE. The show was headlined by Triple H defeating Chris Jericho for the Undisputed Championship, but everyone in the building was there for one thing: The Rock versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Hogan had returned with the NWO months earlier as a heel, but the Toronto crowd refused to boo him. The match was billed as Icon versus Icon, and what it lacked in technical quality, it made up for in crowd electricity. The Rock won, but Hogan left the arena as a babyface to thunderous ovations. WrestleMania 19 in 2003 gave us three genuine classics. Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho was a generational clash of styles done brilliantly. The Rock versus Austin met for the third and final time at WrestleMania. The main event saw Brock Lesnar defeat Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship after almost breaking his neck. Hulk Hogan also defeated Vince McMahon in a street fight that was totally unhinged. Mania 19 will go down as one of the most criminally underrated shows of all time. The following year, WrestleMania celebrated the 20th edition of the show back at Madison Square Garden. The main event for the Raw brand was a triple threat for the World Heavyweight Championship, which saw Chris Benoit make Triple H submit via the Crippler Crossface, winning his first world title. On the SmackDown side, Eddie Guerrero defeated Kurt Angle to retain the WWE Championship. The sight of Benoit and Guerrero, two men who had clawed their way through every obstacle the business threw at them, embracing in the center of Madison Square Garden to close the show, moved grown men to tears. The Undertaker also returned in his Deadman persona to defeat Kane, resetting his mythology for the years ahead. The shadow of what happened later to both Benoit and the Attitude Era's cast of characters makes parts of this decade bittersweet. But from WrestleMania 13's double turn to WrestleMania 17's perfection and WrestleMania 20's emotional finale, this stretch produced some of the most memorable moments the show has ever seen. The company was about to change its name, split its roster, and enter an era defined by one man's undefeated streak and another man's drive to never give up. WrestleMania 21 in 2005 was styled as WrestleMania Goes Hollywood and held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. Batista had just broken out of Triple H's Evolution stable, turning on his mentor and igniting one of the most satisfying face turns in years. Their match for the World Heavyweight Championship was the payoff fans had been craving. On the SmackDown side, John Cena defeated JBL for the WWE Championship, starting his reign as the new face of the company. WrestleMania 21 also introduced the Money in the Bank ladder match, which reshaped WWE's entire calendar for years. Edge won that inaugural match and positioned himself as the cunning villain to Cena's babyface persona. Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels also delivered a technical showpiece that many still cite as one of WrestleMania's finest pure wrestling matches. WrestleMania 22 in 2006 in Chicago featured two world title matches at the top. John Cena retained the WWE Championship against Triple H, and Rey Mysterio, carrying the memory of his close friend Eddie Guerrero, who had passed away months earlier, won the World Heavyweight Championship in a triple threat match against Orton and Kurt Angle. Elsewhere, Edge defeated Mick Foley in a hardcore match that included Edge spearing Foley through a flaming table at ringside, and Shawn Michaels demolished Vince McMahon in a no-holds-barred match. WrestleMania 23 in 2007 drew over 80,000 fans to Ford Field in Detroit in one of the biggest crowds WrestleMania had seen since the Attitude Era peak. The main event was John Cena defending the WWE Championship against Shawn Michaels. On the SmackDown side, The Undertaker challenged Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship, and the celebrity centerpiece was the Battle of the Billionaires, Donald Trump's representative Bobby Lashley against Vince McMahon's representative Umaga. Lashley won, Trump shaved McMahon bald, and the segment drew enormous mainstream coverage. WrestleMania 24 in Orlando gave The Undertaker the main event spotlight he deserved as he defeated Edge for the World Heavyweight Championship. Elsewhere, Shawn Michaels ended Ric Flair's career in one of wrestling's most emotional matches. Floyd Mayweather also knocked out the Big Show in a celebrity boxing match, and then came a 2-year run that many consider the greatest back-to-back matchups in WrestleMania history. WrestleMania 25 in Houston was a show with a disappointing main event, but also gave us perhaps the greatest match in Mania history. The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels went back and forth in a highly dramatic affair, with several moments where it genuinely seemed the streak might end. HBK attempted a moonsault, Undertaker caught him mid-air and planted him with a tombstone to extend the streak. WrestleMania 26 in Phoenix took that rivalry one step further with the most dramatic stipulation possible: streak versus career. If Shawn Michaels could not beat The Undertaker, his career was over. The build was some of the finest long-form storytelling WWE had produced in years. Michaels consumed by obsession, putting everything on the line, convinced he was the one man who could do it. The match itself matched their previous year's classic in quality. The final moment, Michaels refusing to stay down, Undertaker looking down at him, forced to end his career, was genuinely heartbreaking. Mr. WrestleMania's career came to an end, and the streak claimed its 18th victim. WrestleMania 27 in 2011 had The Rock hosting the show and other celebrity involvements, but the card itself was thin. The Undertaker defeated Triple H in a brutal no-holds-barred match that left both men barely able to walk out of the arena. Miz versus John Cena in the main event disappointed the crowd, with The Rock's interference causing a restart that felt contrived. CM Punk and Randy Orton had a decent match, but the show overall felt like a placeholder. WrestleMania 28 in 2012 in Miami fully redeemed it. The Rock had promised a year earlier, live on television, that he would face John Cena at WrestleMania 28. WWE held to that promise, and the year-long build created genuine anticipation for a dream match. The Rock won in the main event, and the show also featured Undertaker versus Triple H inside Hell in a Cell with Shawn Michaels as the referee. WrestleMania 29 at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey drew over 80,000 fans and was the highest-grossing live event in WWE history at that point. The main event was Rock vs. Cena in a rematch the year after Once in a Lifetime. Cena defeated The Rock to win his record 11th WWE Championship, avenging his loss from the previous year. Most fans found the rematch unnecessary, and the lack of novelty hurt the show's legacy. The genuine highlight of the show was CM Punk versus The Undertaker in one of the best streak matches. Elsewhere on the card, Triple H defeated Brock Lesnar in a no-holds-barred match that had the crowd engaged but felt like a rematch that the game didn't necessarily need to win. But while Mania 29 was mostly a letdown, WrestleMania 30 in 2014 was one of the most complete and historically important WrestleManias ever. The show opened with Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock together in the ring, sharing a moment that no one who was watching will forget. In the main event, Daniel Bryan defeated Batista and Randy Orton in a triple threat match after qualifying for the bout by defeating Triple H in the opener, winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. It was one of the most satisfying endings in WrestleMania history, but it wasn't the biggest story coming out of Mania that year. Between Bryan's two matches, Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker took place in the midcard. The expectation was simple. The streak continues. It had always continued. But at WrestleMania 30, The Undertaker lost by pinfall to Brock Lesnar, ending the streak. Grown men sat with their mouths open. Commentary fell silent. Journalists described the end of the streak as the biggest shocker in WrestleMania history. Whether it was the right decision has been debated ever since. But there is no denying that on the same night, WrestleMania gave fans the most shocking moment they'd ever witnessed and the most emotionally satisfying ending they'd demanded for months. It was the perfect paradox. The decade that started with Cena's coronation ended with the crowd taking the wheel. Two things were certain walking out of New Orleans. The streak was gone, and a new era of fan power had arrived. The next chapter of WrestleMania would be shaped by both of those realities. WrestleMania 31 in 2015 at Levi's Stadium is remembered for one moment above all else. The scheduled main event was Brock Lesnar defending the WWE World Heavyweight Championship against Roman Reigns, a match the crowd in attendance had very little interest in seeing, despite Reigns being pushed as WWE's next top star. Lesnar and Reigns fought a physical, hard-hitting match, and as Reigns started to edge toward a victory, Seth Rollins shocked the world by cashing in his Money in the Bank contract mid-match to steal the title in what became known as the heist of the century. The rest of the show had real highlights too. Daniel Bryan won the Intercontinental Championship in a stellar ladder match, Sting made his WWE debut in a match against Triple H, and The Undertaker returned to defeat Bray Wyatt in his first appearance since the streak ended. But Mania 31 will always be remembered as the night Seth Rollins stole WrestleMania. WrestleMania 32 in 2016 set a new attendance record as over 100,000 fans filled the building, surpassing the previous record held by WrestleMania 3. The visual of that crowd was extraordinary, but the show itself was disappointing. Roman Reigns was booed throughout his main event win over Triple H for the WWE Championship. Undertaker defeated Shane McMahon in a Hell in a Cell match that was more spectacle than substance, but still gave the audience something to cheer on a lackluster Mania. WrestleMania 33 in Orlando had a controversial finish as The Undertaker lost to Roman Reigns in the main event and then left his hat, coat, and gloves in the ring. Seth Rollins defeated Triple H in an unsanctioned match, getting payback for Triple H's betrayal, and Goldberg vs. Brock Lesnar delivered a brief but intense brawl. The show also featured an underrated contest between Shane McMahon and AJ Styles and the return of the Hardy Boys in a moment that brought the house down. But while Mania 33 was an upgrade from the disappointment of previous year, Mania 34 ended up overpromising and underdelivering. WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans marked Ronda Rousey's in-ring WWE debut, teaming with Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Seth Rollins opened the main card by winning the Intercontinental Championship in a triple threat. The main event was Lesnar vs. Reigns for the second time at WrestleMania, with Lesnar retaining in a way that left the crowd utterly cold. Daniel Bryan also returned from 3 years of forced retirement to team with Shane McMahon against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura faced off in a dream match that couldn't live up to the standard set by their encounter in New Japan. But after Mania 34's disappointment, WrestleMania 35 in 2019 at MetLife Stadium made history. Becky Lynch defeated Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey and SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair in a winner-takes-all triple threat match to win both championships. The finish was abrupt and slightly anticlimactic, but the moment of Lynch pinning Rousey for the first time in her WWE career was historic. Seth Rollins also opened the show by beating Lesnar for the Universal title with a low blow and a series of curb stomps, and Kofi Kingston's WWE Championship win over Daniel Bryan was perhaps the most feel-good moment of the entire night. But then the world stopped, and WrestleMania had to adapt. WrestleMania 36 in 2020 was held across 2 nights at the Empty Performance Center in Orlando. What could have been a disaster became something genuinely fascinating as WWE leaned into cinematic storytelling. The Undertaker vs. Styles happened in a pre-recorded boneyard match shot like a horror film, with motorcycles, a gravedigger, and gothic atmosphere that played to television in ways a live match never could have. John Cena vs. Bray Wyatt's Firefly Funhouse match was a surrealist trip through Cena's career. Drew McIntyre defeated Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship, and as the world stopped due to a pandemic, WrestleMania kept delivering. WrestleMania 37 in 2021 brought fans back in a partially filled Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. Night 1 was historic as Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair main evented, with Belair winning the SmackDown Women's Championship in a match that received universal acclaim. Night 2 saw Roman Reigns, now carrying the tribal chief character that had redefined his entire career, retain the Universal Championship against Edge and Daniel Bryan in a dominant triple threat. WrestleMania 38 in 2022 in Dallas saw Reigns carry the momentum as he defeated Brock Lesnar in a winner-takes-all unification match, claiming both the WWE and Universal Championships to become the undisputed Universal Champion. Night 1 closed with Stone Cold Steve Austin coming out of retirement to defeat Kevin Owens in a no-holds-barred match. But the most talked-about moment from WrestleMania 38 happened mid-show on Night 2, when a mystery opponent was announced for Seth Rollins and out-walked Cody Rhodes, making his return after 6 years away, kicking off Cody's journey to finish his story. WrestleMania 39 in 2023 in Los Angeles saw that story reach its first climax as Rhodes challenged Reigns for the undisputed title in the Night 2 main event. In the final seconds, Solo Sikoa hit Rhodes with the Samoan Spike before Reigns speared him to retain the title, making Reigns the first wrestler to defend a world championship at 3 consecutive WrestleManias during the same reign. Night 1 delivered its own highlight in Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn defeating the Usos for the undisputed tag titles. Charlotte Flair also lost the SmackDown Women's title to Rhea Ripley, and the triple threat between Gunther, Sheamus, and Drew McIntyre had everyone on the edge of their seats. WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia is considered one of the greatest WrestleManias ever. The Rock had returned to align with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, turning heel and inserting himself into the Cody Rhodes story. Rhodes found allies in Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Jey Uso, and eventually even John Cena and The Undertaker appearing during the mayhem of Night 2's Bloodline Rules main event as Rhodes defeated Reigns to win the undisputed WWE Championship, ending Reigns' record 1,316-day world title reign and finishing his story. Night 1 saw Sami Zayn defeating Gunther to end a record-breaking 666-day Intercontinental title reign and Rhea Ripley defeating Becky Lynch in the opener. WrestleMania 40 delivered a memorable show that was fitting for Mania's 40-year anniversary, but WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas failed to continue the momentum. Night 1 delivered a thrilling triple-threat main event with Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and CM Punk, but Jey Uso's controversial win and Travis Scott's involvement in the Night 2 main event between John Cena and Cody Rhodes drew massive fan backlash. However, when it's all said and done, 41 years after Hulk Hogan and Mr. T stood in Madison Square Garden, WrestleMania is bigger and louder than Vince McMahon could have imagined when he bet everything on that first night. The names change, the eras shift, old legends retire, and new stars arrive, but the show goes on, and WrestleMania stands tall as the grandest stage of them all.